And I was very interested in the question, what is it about excellent teachers that makes them excellent? Because most teachers that I've come across are good or okay, but it's only a very small minority of teachers who really are amazing and fantastic, such as Anne. And I was really interested in saying, well, what is it about these excellent teachers that make them excellent? So here's a question. I'm so loving this because this is just exactly what the research showed. So we've got listening, really patience, and passion and enthusiasm. Anything else? So I had a look at the literature first to see, well, what is there in the literature that tells us about what students think of excellent teachers? And there wasn't much, very specifically, on neurodiverse students' views of excellent teachers. There's loads of stuff, of course, on difficulties that students with dyslexia or other conditions experience. There's loads of other stuff about actually teaching neurodiverse students in higher education. And there's lots of stuff in the literature about the experience of being a neurodiverse student in higher education. But I couldn't find anything that specifically said this is what neurodiverse students think excellent teaching is. I wanted to really take it from the student perspective. But fantastic. So what I thought I'd do is I would just interview all my students and ask them, you know, what is it about the excellent teachers you've had either at university or before you came to university that really made those teachers excellent for you? And it was a qualitative piece of research. I was just going to interview all these students and record them and then write those transcripts up and then analyse the transcripts. I basically asked them the question, if you do have or if you've had an excellent teacher, what is it about that teacher that really made them excellent? And then I had some follow-up questions, you know, how do they make you feel and what impacts and consequences did they have on your life? And just talk to the student. And it was really interesting because most students really were very happy to talk about excellent teachers. You know, they might think about it for a moment, but there was no reticence at all in the emotion with which they spoke to me about their excellent teachers. So it's something quite important to people if they've had somebody who they're happy to describe as an excellent teacher. I was surprised at how fluent and how happy they were to spend an extra 15-20 minutes telling me about their experience of excellent teachers. And what do you think my students said in addition to what we've already said? So we've mentioned patience, we've mentioned really listening. Any ideas what the students said when we asked them?
Humour.
Humour, right, okay. Anything else?
Teachers being kind.
Oh, I love that, yeah. Kind, humour, and
being approachable.
Being approachable.
Lively.
Lively.
Yeah, interactive.
Interactive.
Yeah.
Being asked how they could be helped, like asking them what they like,
yeah.
What would help them.
Okay.
Engaging.
Engaging.
And yeah, I mean making the subject accessible.
Handouts.
Handouts.
You know, I know some universities record sessions so
yeah.
that you can store them.
So there's some themes there, aren't there? There are themes about how the teacher is as a person, their energy, their enthusiasm, their care, then the skills of listening, and then also some, you know, the handouts, the structuring, the questions.
The variety of teaching styles.
The variety of teaching styles. Yeah. So just to explain what you do, as many of you probably know, you do your interviews, you transcribe them, and then you do the thematic analysis. This is the way I was going to do it. So you basically read through all your interviews, and then you look for themes, and you identify all the themes in the interview, and you start off with lots of themes, and then you condense them down, and you do this sort of sequentially. So you might start with 80 themes, and then you collapse them down into 20 themes, and then collapse them down perhaps into 10 themes, and then find your 4 or 5 core themes. And then you say, look, this is basically the truth of what we found out about students' views of excellence. So I had 109 interviews, approximately 20 minutes each, and you know, they were split between boys, you know, women and men. So graduates, 41 postgraduates. And initially, I got 81 themes that emerged in the literature. So lots of things. And there would have been, you know, humour would have been one, patience would have been one, listening, kindness. So lots. So here's a list of the 35 main themes, going 1 to 35. Clear examples. So that was mentioned 104 times. Lecture handouts, that was mentioned 76 times. Patience was mentioned 43 times. Demands feedback and actually uses it. So this is a student saying, you know, everyone asks feedback, but you know, those who are really good actually act on the feedback and change something about what they do based on your feedback. So there were 35 main themes. And then I came up with some core themes. So core theme was structure, signposting and slides, and that core theme is made up of use of good slides, clear lecture handouts, good structure, good signposting. Another core theme was examples and explanations. So reducing the list of 35 themes into 10 core themes. So these are the 10 core themes in students' views of excellent teaching. So clear structure and signposting and use of slides, using lots of explanations, as Anne was saying, energy and enthusiasm, empathy, concern, being interested in the student, respect, fairness, feeling that you're being treated as an equal and that you're not being talked down to by somebody else, using lots of questioning, clarifications, challenging students, time, so that's patience. The actual performance of being a teacher and having clear voice and diction and not sort of being difficult to understand or not having a foreign accent that's so difficult to understand that it takes away from your mental resources that may help, that would otherwise help you to understand the material. Humour and storytelling, and authenticity. Authenticity means about feeling that they were really showing up as they are.
But what the students don't question is the assessment method, is it? Because the young students will take that as a given, or they wouldn't realise that there was any possibility of varying it. But
that's a good point, yeah.
My angle on an excellent university teacher is one who says to the course leader, or is the course leader, and says, we've got to revalidate this course because the assessment methods are not inclusive.
I like that, yes.
Yeah,
Nobody
absolutely.
thought of that. I hadn't even thought of that that would be part of what an excellent teacher is.
Yeah. When in an institution where they've got any
where they're able to do
in
that.
a secondary
yeah.
school, of course, they're stuck with the exam board. Although the head can change the exam board, can't they?
Now, one of the reasons for sort of doing this research is it's an assumption, but I think it's a relatively valid one, that neurodiverse students will be particularly sensitive to excellent teaching versus not so good teaching, and therefore it's particularly useful to capture their views in terms of feeding back to teachers if we want to improve the overall standard of teaching. So these 10 themes, it seem to me, and I wonder whether you agree, could be put into 3 meta themes. So I've colour-coded them. So clear structure and signposting in slides, using examples and explanations, questioning the students and challenging the students, and clarity of voice. I've put them all together into this theme of clarity. So really being clear in the teaching. So thinking of how you're going to help students engage with the learning material and getting that students to feel that they understand what it is that they need to learn. But of course, learning requires you to feel confused at times as part of the learning process. But there's a sense of clarity in the way that the teacher teaches. In red, I've got the second theme of performance. So it's that energy, it's that enthusiasm, it's that sort of emotional engagement. And then the third core theme was care, which is this, the umbrella term I'm using for having a real relationship with the students, not just treating them as sort of, people that are just going to sit an exam. And it's not just a purely transactional thing, but there's a sense, and this for me was what I suppose surprised me a bit about the research. I wasn't expecting that. I thought that if you're a student at this highly competitive entry university, so long as you've got some great professor who knows his or her stuff and is prancing around the stage, you're going to be happy. But these students were saying, actually, for me, the excellent teachers have been teachers who I really feel they care about me as a person. So for me, that's the most sort of powerful finding in the research. Clarity is most important, care is the second most important thing, and performance is the least important. But it all needs to come together. So if I want to be an excellent teacher to neurodiverse students, I really need to be thinking, how can I improve the clarity of my teaching? What can I do to demonstrate more care towards my students? And finally, what could I do to sort of enhance my performance? The interesting thing is excellent teachers are excellent in very different ways, so it's very idiosyncratic what it means to be an excellent teacher. Nobody's going to be excellent in the same way, which I think relates to this idea of authenticity, that you've got to be you've got to show up. I've got to be Sebastian Boo, I can't pretend to be, Professor so-and-so. I've got to be me, And I think that also helps with the relationship thing. You know, if you feel somebody's being themselves, being vulnerable, it makes it easier for the student to be vulnerable. And I think that's really important for neurodiverse students, because often there's so much emotion involved that gets in the way of learning, sort of feeling threatened or anxious. And that really, if we're feeling a bit too threatened or anxious, that's going to really put offline the bits of the brain that we need to think things through slowly.
You have to be brave to be yourself,
Yeah.
both as a
Yeah.
teacher and a learner.
Great.
Because you have to show yourself as not knowing the answers, both ways.
You've got to be okay not
You
getting
don't have
it
to
wrong.
know everything as a
Absolutely.
teacher, and you've got to make mistakes as a learner and ask stupid, I hate that word, stupid questions.
Vulnerability. There's an American academic and writer called Brené Brown. She's got a TED talk, and she talks about vulnerability and the importance and power of vulnerability and how it's important for mental health, but just sort of optimal function. So then I put this all together to come up with a model of excellent teaching, and you use this thing called inductive analysis. Excellent teaching is these three things: it's performance, it's clarity, and it's care. And performance is important because it gets the students initially emotionally engaged with the teacher. You know, you turn up in the class and you need to sort of feel, oh yeah, that's interesting, I'm going to listen to this lady or this man. And then the clarity helps the sort of intellectual engagement, because you know, you could be prancing around the stage and, you know, with coloured balloons and, you know, lots of song and dance, but you also you need some substance to that. It's not, teaching isn't purely entertainment. So the clarity helps with the intellectual engagement. The thinking through the ideas is not helping them stay on track cognitively. And then the care is again emotional engagement, but I'd say this sort of at a deeper level. So you feel that you have I have a relationship with Anne, or you know, she wants the best for me, and that's going to help me sort of when I'm doing my homework at home. I want to do well because, you know, there's a real sense of a human connection there, and that helps me in my motivation and feeling supported in the risk taking, in wanting to do well for me and my teacher.
Emotional intelligence, you've got emotion and you've got intelligence, but emotional intelligence of the teacher, of the lecturer,
Yeah.
is so important,
Yes.
and yet it's so little understood, and it's almost seen as too pink and fluffy. It's too seen as oh, we don't do that. Well, actually, as a teacher, as a good lecturer, as a good trainer, coach, you need to be emotionally intelligent.
Absolutely, yeah. And so
Sorry.
what can we do to help teachers? Okay. Right. So that was my idea, and then I also linked it up with this Aristotelian idea of what excellent rhetoric is. So this idea that what makes an excellent speaker and orator is somebody who's got, you know, the speech has to have sort of logic, and there's got to be composition of the speech, and I thought that matched up with this clarity component. This pathos is this idea that you need to induce the right kind of emotions in the audience for them to sort of agree or be convinced by your argument. So that's for me the performance aspect of teaching, and ethos is about your audience believing in you, thinking that you're a person of virtue, and being willing to listen to you because you're a good person. And I think that I'm relating that to the idea of care. And so I'm saying, you know, teaching isn't about just delivering a persuasive speech, but I think there's an important point then that, you know, as a teacher, you need to persuade your students to a certain degree. This stuff is important. It's, you know, it's part of being an excellent teacher, I would argue, to help students to understand why what you're teaching them is so important. So like the history teacher, part of being a passionate teacher about your subject, saying, yeah, this is really important. If you understand this stuff, you get a perspective on history, you understand why the world is the way it is, you can see how people from different backgrounds and different times have different perspectives. So you've got to convince the students of the value of why you're learning this, and go beyond simply teaching them stuff so they can pass a test and get a bit of paper. Okay, there's another model here about emotion regulation. And basic ideas, we've got 3 emotional regulation systems: drive, that makes us want to achieve things in life, gain resources; soothing, which makes us feel calm and safe, important in sort of early relationships, but it's important throughout life; and then threat, so, you know, feeling frightened and anxious. And I'm suggesting that care gets your soothing system going in the students. It also reduces threat, and drive is I'm saying students, all of us human beings have these emotional regulation systems, and excellent teachers know how to touch and regulate these emotional systems in the student by when you've got performance and clarity, you increase drive, and when you care, you boost soothing and you reduce threat.